basement tapes. Welcome back, people of the pod, to Office Hours with Karpf and Loge Summer School Edition. I am Peter Loge, your co-host and associate professor in the School of Media and Public Affairs at the George Washington University and a strategic communications consultant. And I am joined, as I am every episode, by
Dave Karpf, also an associate professor in the School of Media and Public Affairs at George Washington University. It's Office Hours with Karpf and Loge, where I keep trying to convince Peter Loge that this is not a visual medium.
Yeah, well, we're on YouTube. The people, they're watching this on YouTube. The people watching on YouTube are going to think, this Karpf guy, I thought he was bright, but apparently it's all a big lie. It's just part of the lie. It's part of the lie. All right, we've got a lot to go on. First of all, before we get into it, if you like this podcast, follow us, tell your friends, rate us on Apple or wherever you rate the podcast things. Spread the word, because we're shallow and we need affirmation from the void.
I really need somebody to tell me that I'm good.
We do. That's why as college professors, it's a great gig, because you stand in front of a room and you say things and a bunch of people have to nod and pretend that you're smart, because their grades and futures hang on basically they're sucking up to you. It's a great gig for shallow people, and I love it. I love it.
Thanks as always. Karpf and Loge, where we get all of Peter Loge's secrets.
This is a safe space, right? No one's really listening, I figure. Thanks also to Alana, who will hopefully make sense of all of this nonsense. We have a lot to cover. This episode, and I should say we're taping on a Thursday ahead of a Tuesday, because we've both got stuff going on, and I'm just trusting the wheels won't completely come off of the universe between now and then.
The nice thing about politics in 2022 is it's not like 5 days is a bunch of media cycles or anything. Nothing will change between now and then.
Nothing will change. And we've seen the pictures of the edge of the universe now, and the vast expanse of billions of year old light. Really, do we get something desperately wrong and completely miss like 4 news cycles because I want to sit by the pool with a cocktail? Not a big deal. We do have a lot to cover today, though, Dave, and we have to start with your favorite high-tech entrepreneur, Mr. Musk.
Elon Musk is getting sued in the Delaware Chancery Court, leading all of us out here to wonder, what's a Chancery Court? I'm really enjoying this because everything has just gotten a little weirder. If we back ourselves up to April 2022, when Elon Musk wasn't trying to buy Twitter, and then he said he was going to try to buy Twitter, and I, of course, was saying, God damn it, don't buy Twitter. But he tried to. He offered $44 billion for Twitter at $54.20 a share. The 420 is because he's a 14-year-old. And then the stock market crashed, and he decided, wait, I don't really want this at all. Can I get take backsies? I'm really rich. And he also tweeted a bunch of nonsense. And now he's announced that he's just going to back out of the deal. And Twitter has said, so you're not allowed to, because you signed a contract. And also, when we file suit, we're just going to include all of the nonsense you've been tweeting. And the judge is going to be super unhappy. So if you remember that poop emoji tweet that he wrote a while back in response to the head of Twitter, yeah, that's now in a legal filing, which had to be real fun for the lawyers putting that together. We don't know what's going to happen with that. Twitter is now saying, no, you have to buy us. And people like me who can't stand Elon Musk and want him to keep his hands off of Twitter are like, yeah, you have to buy them. Wait, what? He's either going to end up having to pay $1 billion to them, buy the company for $44 billion, or my real hope is that the two sides settle and he agrees not to buy Twitter and pay them $1 billion a year for 25 years, kind of like Bobby Bonilla Day with the New York Mets, so that every year we can all come together and laugh at the misfortune of this really rich idiot who decided that he could say whatever he wanted and the courts would never care. I think they're going to care.
So, ladies and gentlemen, Dave Karpf on Twitter. If there's a running theme to this podcast, it is probably not strategic communication. It is probably not on Twitter. It's Elon Musk and the ongoing will he or won't he. Tune in to season 4, the ongoing saga of Elon Musk, Dave Karpf, and the Twitter files. All right, there's actually other stuff going on, and we want to talk about the specific instances of whether or not Supreme Court justices can eat expensive meals in peace, but then the broader question of political stunts and political activism and the strategic communications implications thereof.
Yeah. What's your take on whether or not Brett Kavanaugh should be allowed to eat at Morton's in peace?
I'm torn. Actually, I'm torn. On one hand, as you, of course I am. I am. If something can't be overthought, really, it's not worth thinking. Like, on one hand, as you know, I'm a, hey, let's use your inside voice and get politics right kind of a guy. I'm from Connecticut, right? This is the Puritans were very happy in my hometown for a long, long time.
We're very from Connecticut.
I am. It's true. It's true. But on the other hand, like, here's a guy saying that it's illegal to protest anywhere near somebody, and defending the First Amendment and saying that you've got to be allowed, people have to be allowed to protest, they have to be allowed to express political points of view. I'm sorry if it makes you uncomfortable. Oh, wait, I didn't mean me. Mm-hmm. Like, it's either okay or it's not. And I have actually been at a dinner, a very small restaurant on the Hill, long time ago, where I just made a super unpopular decision in my office, and I was in a relative position of power. And at the next table were a bunch of people I'd pissed off, and they spent the time talking loudly about what a bad person I was. That's really not a tremendous amount of fun. Mm-hmm. But that is much lower stakes than, for example, guns and abortion. Like, this is like, yes, like, this rises to the moment. My concern is every moment now like this? Is every slight, oh my God, I've got to now protest this? Mm-hmm. So it's, I am really torn. And, you know, at some point, like, you just have to allow people to live their lives, also in part because there's kind of a chilling effect on then the people who go into public service. Mm-hmm. Because if everybody is, not just justices or members of Congress, but congressional staff, election workers, are legit fair game for protests, people aren't going to go into it, right? You saw what Trump did to the election workers in Georgia. And when I was a staffer a long time ago, I received a death threat. I've walked through angry mobs. I've been screamed at. You know, if that's sort of like part and parcel of the job, not a lot of people are going to want that job, and that sort of concerns me as well. You probably have a much more insightful and concise take on this.
So I have a few layers. The first, and this is again what I said on Twitter. I joked on Twitter that I think it's a real strategic mistake to protest Brett Kavanaugh when he's at a steakhouse. I think you should protest Brett Kavanaugh when he's going to the gym or to the doctor's office. But I think we need to respect that it is out of bounds to protest him when he's going to consume red meat or smoke cigars or drink like a high amount of alcohol, right? Like, go ahead, like anything that is going to shorten his lifespan, like protesters, back off, let the man live his life. But like, if he wants to make healthy, if he's going to eat a salad, go ahead and protest the dude.
Actually, this raises an interesting point, though. Actually, quite accidentally, you were strategic there. Usually you're strategic on purpose. This time I'm nearly certain it was an accident. I like the idea of protesting him when he's going to the gym or to the doctor's office, because that's effectively what he said. That's what Dobbs does, right? It limits access to healthcare. And so make his access to healthcare unpleasant. No, seriously. I mean, that way at least the stunt is on message.
Yeah, though I think it's the stunt is on message anyway, just because like all of the defenses for why this shouldn't happen run immediately into rights that are not enumerated in the Constitution, and Kavanaugh himself just overthrew. Like, you don't have a right to privacy at a fancy steakhouse or a not so fancy steakhouse. And the way that we know that is because you just declared that there's no right to privacy. Like, that was your decision. You don't have a right to privacy of people not protesting outside of your home. We know that because the Supreme Court has said that protesters can go to the homes of people who work at clinics. Like, they have for years and years said there are no rights for people who are on the other side of this, and we are the court, our word is law. So in that sense, it's on message kind of no matter what. The reason why I like versions of that joke of like, hey, let him red meat himself to death, is because the thing that feels disempowering both about this tactic and about everything is, of course, okay, what comes next? What is the theory of change? And the theory of change is either we're going to pack the courts or completely reform the judiciary, which, yes, we need to, but also we don't have 50 plus senators for that, nor do we have a president who's going to go for it yet. So like that is a longer term strategy for a short term, like 5-alarm fire crisis. And beyond that, the answer is, if we're stuck with these justices, then we need these justices to feel so uncomfortable that they start acting in a totally different way. So go ahead and make them discomfort. Like, I don't think, like, he's not going to change his, like, how he decides on the bench because of protesters outside of Morton's. But the idea of he's going to need to face consequences, and he's going to need to live the experience of people treating the judiciary branch as though it is not legitimate because they keep acting illegitimate. Like, if he doesn't feel what that means for people like him, then you're just stuck. You have no theory of change. This is an undercooked theory of change, but the reason it's undercooked is because you really don't have a lot of legitimate options.
Well, so
instead, it's like protest him everywhere and like hope the guy decides that he really wants early retirement.
So I think there are a couple of things going on here, though. I think one is that makes sense, right? That you, like you said, it's okay to protest at clinic workers' homes. So now we're going to protest at your home.
Yeah.
Like, these are the rules. But I don't think that's how most people in America watching this view it. I think, like, leave the guy alone, he's having dinner. But if you're protesting him going to the doctor, now it's like for like. It's more obviously like for like. Oh, I get it now. Mm-hmm. Right. And making it a little bit uncomfortable, seeing that there are actual social consequences, right? So my hope is all of these justices are looking at the political, legal, and social consequences of their overreach and saying, oh, we hadn't really thought this through. We hadn't thought about the unintended consequences. We hadn't thought about all the medical implications. We hadn't thought about, all this other stuff. Maybe there's a bit going on. We have to, maybe context actually matters more than we considered, right? And I think that matters, which is why I think the stunts make sense. But it is this. This plays to the larger question I want to raise too, though, is, and we've talked about this, right? I'm increasingly thinking about politics in terms of what now, what next, then what? Mm-hmm. And what now is on the agenda, this matters, this matters, this matters. Make noise, pay attention to this, pay attention to this. In part because, one, it's important, and two, it drives other stuff off the agenda, right? If we are talking about the need to codify Roe in Congress with legislatures, that means Republicans can't then go talk about whatever it is they want to talk about. So that's a win because you have agenda status. But there's still what's got to happen next keys, right? So I want to give you a couple of other examples of stunts. We can talk about the stunts, and then you can say this works, this doesn't. We're both familiar, before we started taping, we're talking about ACT UP. They drove the agenda and I think really helped create some policy change. There's a piece in the New York Times I'm going to throw at peterloge.com/podcasts in the footnotes, and also on Medium, that in England, climate protesters are gluing themselves to picture frames of famous paintings. And they're sneaking under the little velvet rope, and they're taking off their coats and showing T-shirts that say "Stop Oil, Stop Big Oil," or putting up signs. So not harming the paintings, but they're putting up signs around the paintings, and they're gluing themselves to the paintings just to draw attention. They say, we're not trying to make friends. We're trying to draw attention. I do, though, also, according to the Times, this may be the most British response ever. In reporting on one of these incidents, nearby a school group was midway through discussing another painting. Claire McDonald, the teacher, seemed unperturbed. "Oh my, I think it's a climate protest. How exciting." But there's this, and there's one more example I want to throw at you, like get attention, get attention, get attention. The risk is you don't have an answer once people do pay attention, right? So a bunch of years ago, I was working on criminal justice issues, and a senator, a Democratic senator, wanted to write comprehensive criminal justice reform legislation. And a staffer running point on this called every activist group he could find and put them all in a room, right? And there was a table, sort of the classic big square table, and the chairs along the outside. And he went around there, what do you want? What do you want? And one person said, well, I want to seat at the table. And the staffer said, well, you've got it. I mean, you're sitting at the table. So what do you want? Well, we just want to be heard. We want input in the process. Right. That's why you're here. So what do you want? And he didn't have an answer. Right. So that's my concern. What do I do with all of this?
Yeah, so I don't know how I feel about the climate stunt. Because on the one hand, I feel echoes of ACT UP there. And I get the rage, the sense of we are being so not listened to that we need to make the elite feel uncomfortable. I don't see okay, what now? But I think the reason for the okay, what now? Like, I think there are good answers when climate folks get a seat at the table. What they say is like Green New, like in the US, it's Green New Deal or Build Back Better. And the answer is, okay, but Manchin isn't letting us. And so then the response to that is, all right, we're going to keep on, like, it's not that we don't have an answer. It's, okay, if you don't have a solution to Manchin and we don't unless like 500,000 people are all going to move to West Virginia to vote in the next election, which, would take a lot of doing. We know that you're kind of stuck with Manchin as the best Democrat you're going to get in West Virginia. So what? It's like, all right, wait until November, try to elect some more Democratic senators, and then like hope that the Dems hold the House, and then you can try again. The odds look really bad, but hey, try it. Like, okay, sure, we'll do that in November. But for now, if you're looking at the climate emergency and saying all of the sort of normal reformist avenues just don't work, like we have tried our best with Build Back Better and been told, just keep waiting, hey, now is not a good time. The response to that saying, okay, if you'd like to ignore this for a while because you think now is not a good time, we're going to glue ourselves to some paintings so you can't ignore it. Like, I don't think that works, but I see how you get there, because all of the things that seem like a higher probability shot all clearly failed already. And part of the reason why elites ought to respond and say, geez, we better do something like Build Back Better is, if in 2022 climate activists are gluing themselves to the paintings, what are they going to be doing in 2025 or 2032? Maybe we should stop putting it off. So I get the logic there, even though there's no answer. But the reason there's no answer is because they got a seat at the table. They were told, okay, sure, we're going to get to work on this. And then 10, 20 years went by, and every time they got sat down at the table, they said, what about all your previous commitments? The answer was like, oil companies didn't really like it, and gas pumps and all that. So like, in that sense, the way we get to the stunts is because of institutional politics breaking down.
Yeah, no, absolutely, absolutely. Like, you resort to this because you feel like you have to resort to it. And Extinction Rebellion, is that the name of the group in the US? I think it's a UK. It's a UK group. Yeah, that's also active in the US. And they've shut down DC before. They've shut down the roads around Parliament in London before. Mm-hmm. And it's to draw attention, I think, and you have to, right? Like, you just got to get agenda status. This matters. This is existential, which means stop paying attention to something else. Start paying attention to this, right? And the classic look at how policy change happens is, first you've got to get on the policymaker's agenda. Either something is there because it's a hurricane, it shows up, or you have to put it there. Second, it's the definition. Holy cats, look at this. Wow, that's crazy. What is that? It's funny you should ask. I know, we're coming back to that. It's a thing. We're coming. Cats? It's a thing. Google it. It's a thing.
Let's stay on topic. All of our listeners agree with me.
We've been through this.
Wildly outdated, but that's all right.
It's retro. It's retro. At any rate, you get on the agenda. Holy cats, look at this. Then the next step is definition. What is that? That is an example of human rights violations, capitalism gone mad, condemning future generations to dystopian nightmares, like whatever this thing is. Oh, and that definition then defines a range of options, right? If it's about, we talked about this with guns, that's the Second Amendment. Well, then we have to have more rights, because if it's about rights, we need more of them. Mm-hmm. Unless apparently it involves women, in which case the court just takes them away, right? And then you sort of choose from the array of solutions, right? So it's agenda status, definition of terms, determination of options, selection of outcome, right? So now you've got agenda status, but you still need the next bits.
So yes, and that's Baumgartner and Jones. So I studied that in undergrad and I've taught it ever since.
Over my shoulder.
The thing I do want to point out is that is a model based on how American government sort of creaks through and functions back when it was a lot more functional than it is today. right? And so I think part of how we are now getting these more stunt like more radical protests is a recognition that the models of how American government does actually function, like those break down, right? Like when Baumgartner and Jones were studying that sort of agenda change, the filibuster was far less used than it is now. And the court didn't overturn stuff just because 6 members of the court had decided that they were going to rule by fiat. That, like, if you were producing those studies now, what you would find is, oh, actually, Congress basically doesn't do anything, because between partisan sorting and gerrymandering and partisan identification just being so strong, it's all like just nothing gets done almost ever. And objectively, more things got done in the 90s, the 80s, the 70s. So as you get a more broken government, you're going to get protests that are more just anguished cries saying, like, hey, government, get your shit together. And again, like I coming out of reformist politics, like I'm with you that I would like to know, okay, what's your plan? What are the next 4 or 5 steps that actually get a thing through? But when the answer to that is, oh, none of these steps work until the elites commit to making government barely functional again. So in the meantime, we're going to make them uncomfortable until they decide to do that. It's in their interest to do that. Like it's underspecified, but I get it because everything's underspecified.
No, I absolutely agree with that, except with a couple of things. First of all, there's a study on a recent report. I'm going to throw in the links at peterloge.com podcast and on Medium from the Partnership for Public Service. It was also done with the Congressional Management Foundation and some others on the State of Congress 2022. Mm-hmm. The researchers talked to a bunch of senior congressional staff, people who've been there 10, 15, 20 years, Ds and Rs, and everybody agrees Congress is broken. Everybody agrees partisan sniping is making it worse. Everybody agrees there's basically every incentive to get on television and no incentive to govern, mm-hmm. right? And it's dastardly. So now we get the incentives, right? So part of the protest is a disincentive to behave this way. Now we need a positive incentive to behave a different way, mm-hmm. right? Right now, Representative Cheney, who I think is doing a remarkable job, has zero incentive to do what she's doing other than she simply believes in it. Mm-hmm. She's getting brutally punished politically, mm-hmm. right? So we need to provide positive incentives for that, right? Because if all you're doing is screaming into the void because, oh my God, we're doomed anyway, so we may as well scream into the void. As an activist, that's completely disempowering. I'm mm-hmm. simply not going to do anything, right? Which leads to then the second level of this, which is, yes, of course, we have to fix Congress. Good people are working on that. We need more, maybe another podcast episode, different episode. The other then is subnational actors, mm-hmm. right? Again, we've talked about this in previous podcasts. The New York Times reporting on states and localities working on climate, mm-hmm. right? California signing a deal with Canada, Phoenix moving more to electric cars. And I think if you're a communications professional, you need to make sure people understand they are agents of change. People have to believe that they can make change. Despair is not a strategy. Mm-hmm. If people don't believe they can make change, they won't try, and change won't happen.
I think that's right. Certainly, in terms of nuts and bolts comm strategy, telling a story in which the audience gets to be the hero or gets to play a meaningful role alongside the hero, like, yes, do that. And also those stories, objective conditions make those stories harder or easier to tell or more or less believable. And the objective conditions that we're all facing right now are ones where that becomes less and less believable on a range of issues. Because, if it's something that 6 members of the court are just going to rule by fiat on, then it's like, all right, what we need to do is just wait like 30 years and hope democracy survives that long. And then we'll get to your rights or the climate or like your kids getting shot in schools then. That's a disempowering story while also just sort of being the facts on the ground unless something big changes.
Yeah, but we still have to do something about it, right? I mean, sort of, my concern is tomorrow's going to show up, right? I mean, tomorrow's going to be here. Mm-hmm. Something's going to happen. Mm-hmm. So you can either help shape that something or you can be shaped by it. So I may as well help shape it. And I am much more pragmatic and I'm not a stunt guy. Mm-hmm. I'm glad that people are doing the big loud stuff. because that then creates a bit of political space for others to come in and go, okay, what can we actually accomplish locally here in DC? You and I both live in Washington, DC, or my hometown of New Haven, Connecticut, or wherever it happens to be, and find that little local lever. Maybe it's volunteering at a local clinic. Maybe it's sending money to local clinics or people supporting women who need reproductive health care. Maybe it's working with local elected officials. You and I have a colleague who volunteers now as a poll worker, because we need people to be poll workers. Like, what is the little piece of change, right? As you said, the activist, the person doing the thing has to feel as if they're the hero of this story, right? If I feel like what I can do, I can help slay the dragon, I'm willing to go help slay the dragon, right? And the best stories are hope, loss, and redemption, right? Boy meets girl, boy loses girl, boy gets girl in the end. Democracy it wasn't perfect, but we were getting better. We were becoming more inclusive. We were tackling climate. We banned assault weapons, and then things went really badly. But you know what? We can do this together if you just do blank. Allow me to help slay the dragon. Allow me to help rescue the village, to have that shot at redemption.
So
If you don't, we're toast.
I mean, that's right. The thing I want to highlight about the big loud stuff, which is also stylistically not really my thing either. Like I planned a bunch of protests in my day, but they were all protests that you get the permits for, and are aimed at getting in the media and making your allies look good and making your opponents think like, oh, you got a big crowd. It's reformist stuff. The thing that I like about the big loud stuff now, though, is I think a more and more realistic part of any strategy has to be based in a theory of change that elites get reminded of how good they have it right now and decide to protect that. Like the case that comes to mind for me that I still teach in class every semester, there's a story that Saul Alinsky tells in Rules for Radicals about organizing that he was doing in the city of Rochester. And the tactic they came up with was to target the Rochester Symphony. And, the people working in the symphony did nothing wrong. But what they said is, we're going to target it. And our tactic is going to be, we're going to do because you can get cheap seats at the symphony real cheap. We're going to do a baked bean bake-off before that. And then we're going to stage a fart-in at the symphony. We're going to eat a bunch of baked beans. We're going to go take our seats, and we're going to let nature take its course. And the logic there, the theory, because they're targeting corporate leaders in Rochester, is, yeah, this is going to suck for everybody else who goes to the symphony. It's going to suck for people who are playing in the symphony. But the wives of the town leaders who are ignoring us right now are going to turn to them and say, I don't know what you did to those people. I don't know what it's going to take, but give them whatever they want so that this doesn't happen again. So it's a logic of your comfortable lives that you enjoy so much and seems like a suit of armor that can never be pierced. We're going to rattle that a bit, and then you are going to listen more. And I think on a broader scale, like that's what I take to be the Morton's protest. That's what I take to be like gluing yourself to paintings, is a sense of amongst the political elites of the world who right now kind of figure we can rule by fiat because what are you going to do? I have this appointment for life. Like I live in comfortable society no matter what. Like the logic of, hey, they should be able to eat in peace is exactly wrong. They should be thinking to themselves, if I want to eat in peace, then I need to make sure that I am operating with enough legitimacy that people think I deserve it. And I'm losing that right now. And while I may not care about the women who are going to die of ectopic pregnancy, because it's not that they haven't thought about the complications, it's that they have decided that they don't care. So if they don't care about the women who will die of ectopic pregnancies, but they do care about their dinner, let them know that their dinner is at stake.
Right. No, I absolutely agree. Oh, good, clever pun. I saw what you did there. I
didn't actually mean that one, but
you're funnier than you think you are. How cool is that? So, but that's very much the what now. Got it. Absolutely on board. There has to be a what next. And it's not like the court's going to reconvene and go, our bad on Dobbs. What we really meant to say was, right? Which is why I think state by state work, maybe other countersuits would make sense. There's got to be a what next, and the then what is building these larger power structures, which I know is something you're really into. All right, with an eye to the clock, I have a couple of other highlights. and then a quick look ahead. Crisis communications always in the news. Examples of good and bad. On the good side, shark attacks in Long Island. Great positive crisis comms on how to handle shark attacks. Bad news. Wow, I'm glad I don't work for Uber. Wow, what a yowza.
Okay, here's the point I want to make on Uber.
I thought you might have an
in
opinion
the
on that.
longer term for your crisis comm strategies is not be such a bankrupt, like morally bankrupt company that around every corner is a thing you did wrong that you pray the press won't hear about. Like, yeah, and this kind of goes back to the Elon stuff too. Like, hey, Elon, eventually you're going to get sued and all of your bullshit is going to be a problem for you. Of course, Uber's having a bad crisis. Like Uber was eventually going to get a bad crisis comms, like really bad crisis comm situation because they did so much unethical and illegal shit. Also, on the shark attack thing, I really worry because what I hear is that it's a baby shark. So what are they supposed to
No.
Got it in there. I want to leave it in.
There are rules. Oh my goodness. The lesson from the shark attacks, according to, where is this from? Long Island shows how your company can survive a shark attack, from PR News. And of course, one of the subheads is once bitten. One, acknowledge the facts. You're the one who brought up baby shark, man. You got no grounds here. One, acknowledge the facts. Two, highlight something positive, if possible, to pivot from the bad. Three, share important facts for context. Four, act promptly to prevent further harm to stakeholders, like presumably people getting bitten by sharks in this case. Five, plan concrete next steps. Six, do those steps, which I think makes sense. The last thing I'm going to throw, mostly because you'll mock me for it, because I love this. James Garner. So there's a website that does celebrity auctions, like celebrities, their estates, their families got to eat. A James Garner estate auction online.
Mhm.
Love me some Rockford Files. I used to plan my day around the Rockford Files. You can buy a coat. You can buy his ad from the Yellow Pages, which is a phone book, which is a thing none of our listeners have ever heard of before. You can buy James Garner's 14-karat gold cufflinks from when he was on This Is Your Life. There's a Pro-Am golf trophy that my wife is desperately concerned I'm going to buy. I'll throw the link up probably after the auction closes, so none of you people can buy the cool James Garner detritus. I love this.
I do want to know to our listeners that we love to hear from you on social media. So my question to the listeners, do not Google this before answering. Who the hell was James Garner? Also, bonus question, what was the Rockford Files?
The opening
No, it's a question for the audience. I never watched the Rockford Files, but I think it was a TV show.
You've never watched the Rockford Files?
No, I'm not that old.
You would love it.
I'm old, but not that old.
You would love it.
Sure.
You would love the Rockford Files. The opening sequence is always an answering machine, which once again reinforces how old it is, because it's one of the newfangled ones with the tapes in them. The answering machine, and people always leaving nasty messages for Jim Rockford, who lived in a trailer on the beach in Malibu. It was awesome.
Talk like this, does it give you arthritis? Because listening to it. But
I gotta go gum some Jello. Where can people find? We're done now. Where can people find you on the Elon Musk pending hellscape?
I am on Twitter as Dave Karpf, Karpf. And I'm substacking, davekarpf.substack.com. Where can people send you Werther's Originals, Grandpa?
MySpace account. I'm on Twitter at PLOGE. You can always find me at peterloge.com/podcast for the footnotes, and also on Medium for the footnotes. If you like us, rate us, follow us, tell your friends. Alana, my deepest apologies as our producer. Here we go. We'll see everybody in a couple of weeks, assuming the wheels don't.
Oh, by the way, are you on Instagram now?
I apparently, yeah, and also I don't know. There's a long Instagram story about I thought I was on, and then
No, we're out of time. Do a short one. Do a short one.
I'm only there because it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. We'll see everybody in 2 weeks.
Follow Peter Loge on Instagram, where he talks about probably the Rockford Files and answering
I
machine.
talk about nothing. I talk about nothing. Bye.